Can you hear me through the microphone? Okay, good. Thank you so much for coming out this evening to our State of the Schools opportunity. I appreciate the time. I do know that for all of our families, for a number of employees and administrators that are here, lives are busy, and so I really do appreciate the fact that you've given us some of your time this evening to learn a little bit about what we're working on in the district, hear a little bit of the celebrations and accomplishments of the district, and set the path a little bit as we look to the future. I want to start this evening with a couple of introductions, if I could. Right down in the front row, I want to introduce 4 members of our Board of Education that are here this evening. I want to tell you as a community that you have an elected Board of Education that works incredibly hard on behalf of the district. They work hard each and every day to ensure that the opportunities that are available to our students continue to be of the highest quality that you expect. So let me introduce Mrs. Barb Intihar, member of the Board of Education. Jim Bowman, president of the Board of Education. Brad Olson, Vice President of the Board of Education. This is Chris Crabtree, Secretary of the Board of Education. I did also see in the back, and I want to introduce a couple of other guests that are here this evening. We have Mayor Dave Brummel from Warrenville. Thank you for being here. We have one of our representatives from the Illinois House of Representatives, Mr. Grant Worley. Thank you for being here this evening. We have, as we did a year ago, in a couple of minutes, when I tell you a little bit about kind of the history that brought us together, we're going to talk a little bit about Engage 200. That was a community engagement process that brought us to today. We had an incredibly dedicated team of individuals that helped support us through that process, a facilitating team. If there are any members of our facilitating team out there this evening, can you wave? Thank you so much. Thanks for your time and effort. And then I'm also going to ask if you would, I've got some members of our district leadership team, our senior leadership team here this evening. Would you stand as well and wave? See Dr. Rammer and the golf course. Thank you. And Mrs. Leacano has been helping us, and she was over on one of this side. So let's tell you a little bit about what we hope to accomplish this evening, especially in the first chunk of this presentation, which is really the state of our schools. If we can, and so the educators that are out there, and I know we've got a ton of instructional leaders, principals that are out there that are probably going to tell me that what I'm modeling here might not be the best instructional pedagogy, because I've got about 5 learning outcomes, which is a lot for a short period of time. But if I can get you to leave here with 4 pieces of information tonight, kind of 4 nuggets that you can share with others to tell them about what's going on in the district, we're going to be successful. And those 4 things would be to have you first help and understand kind of what brought us here. Let's connect the past to the present, to the future, engage 200 into our current strategic plan. Certainly want to give you an understanding of some of the key accomplishments and celebrations for which you should be very proud in District 200. We do have a very, very good quality educational system, and I want to highlight a few of those things for you. I want to make sure that we spend a little bit of time talking about what the future of learning is going to look like, and introduce to you this evening a new term that's very much going to be a part of a lot of the goals and the direction that we've set in the district. And then I want to leave you with really understanding what the 4 priorities are that the Board of Education has set for this year. And one in particular, when we get into talking about a facility master plan, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into this evening as well. So if I can get you to leave with those 4 nuggets tonight that, again, you understand and hopefully can share with others, we're going to have them successful. So just a couple of quick facts as we get started. And I do want to tell you, well, let me start with this so we clear it out. You got, when you came in, a blue folder That blue folder on the right side has 3 pieces of paper that I am going to reference during the presentation tonight, so you might want to go ahead and pull those out right at the start if you would. And the first one is really just a little bit of information about District 200, kind of a profile of District 200. Our student enrollment, we enroll a little over 13,000 students within the district. To give you a little sense of the breakdown of our student population. Also on that sheet of paper, you'll see a little bit about the staff in District 200. We have 1,600, a little over 1,600 employees in District 200. About 1,100 of those are licensed or certified teaching positions. And then 2 quick metrics that I put up here because I think they're important to understand in our staff. The heart of our district, those that really make opportunities available to our students. We have in District 200 a 97% retention rate of our certified staff. If you compare that to some of the industry statistics that are out there, 90% is a good solid retention rate. And so when you look at those that work with our students each and every day, that's really a key accomplishment of the district. Also want to point out that 80% of our certified or licensed staff have a master's degree. That compares to, I think, a state average that's about 55%. So again, we've got a high quality teaching staff working with our students each day. We also educate students in 23 facilities across the district. And just to give you a little sense of what that means, not just in terms of number, but in size, we have about 2.5 million square feet of facility across the district, about 250 acres of property on which that sits. And so again, you see the breakdown of the facility. And we often talk about District 200 as a K-12 district, but in reality, we are an ECH22 school district. So we start educating students at the age of 3 at our Early Learning Center, and then we do also have a transition center which services students up until age 22 that have a specific need within the transition center. We do also have a couple of operational centers in Woodland and our school service center, again, that are part of our learning process. So if you can hang on with me for just 1 second, I'm just grabbing my 2 sheets of paper that I'll reference so I don't forget to get them a little bit later. Okay. My apologies. Now it's okay, so how do we get here? A little bit of connecting the past to the present. About 18 months ago, a year and a half ago, through the leadership of the Board of Education and direction of the Board of Education, District 200 began a community engagement process. And again, I want to be really, really clear that we have a good, excellent, high-quality school district, but at the time I think the thought was, let's really do a thorough job of engaging our community and understanding what it is that they want for District 200 moving forward. And so over a series of 6 sessions and an opportunity to listen to about 700 people that took part in those sessions, we produced and shared with the community about a year ago, about the same time last year, a report that highlighted the outcomes of Engage 200. And so as we take us then to present time, what we did in the fall of last year is that we took that feedback from the community, looked at some of the other priorities and goals that were in process, and turned that into a good action plan, a strategic plan that we call Vision 2018. So as you hear us talk about Vision 2018, Vision 2018 is your feedback as a community, the things that you asked us to prioritize for the system, put in the form of a strategic plan. Our strategic plan is built on the mission of our school district, and our mission is to make sure that we provide a good quality education for every student. There are more words, I know, in that mission statement up there, but what's at the core of it is our desire to make sure that we provide a future-ready opportunity for every student in District 200. There are 5 commitments that we've made to the community as a part of the Vision 2018 plan. Right in the middle of that chart is our commitment to ensure that we continue to improve learning for our students and again, make sure that they have a 21st century learning opportunity. Mrs. Dahlquist has spent a lot of time out in buildings at the start of this year talking to our staff about many of the same concepts that we're going to be talking about tonight, and when she goes out, she finally puts a little heart around this middle of the chart, because that really is the heart of what we do, which is student learning. We know, however, that to deliver a high-quality learning opportunity for all students, there are some other critical parts to the educational system to which we need to attend. We certainly need to make sure that we manage the system in a fiscally responsible manner, that we set the district up for long-term fiscal stability. We want to make sure that we continue to engage the community through opportunities like tonight, as well as other ongoing communication opportunities to make sure that our community continues to be an active part of the work of the district. We want to make sure that we provide high-quality facilities in which our students can learn, and we want to make sure that we provide the support structures that all students need to be able to learn to high levels, as well as the support structures for our staff to be able to educate students at high levels. And so in our Vision 2018 plan, it is built on those 5 commitments that stay central to the work that we do. In the second page of your packet, then, you'll see a little more detailed chart that looks like this. It's going to be a little tough to read up on the screen because some of the type is a little bit small, and so we've provided you a detail to it. But the feedback, if you go back and look at the feedback report from the Engage 200 process, what you're going to see is that many of the areas of focus that the community asked us to continue to keep central are the detail in the Vision 2018 plan. Those are the strategies on which we're working. Vision 2018 is a long-range plan. It's not a plan that we've set in place and said we're going to accomplish it in a year or 2 years. That's the name Vision 2018. And so our Board of Education each year, as they go through their goal-setting discussion and process, they come back to this chart, and from within the chart really determine what are the areas of priority for each of the years. Last year, a couple of the areas that were a focus up here, one was a focus on finance, making sure that we enhanced opportunities to look at other sources of revenue within the district. They placed a focus on FIT that we're going to talk a little bit more about again tonight. That's our Future of Instruction and Technology. They placed a focus last year on having a good, solid community engagement plan. And then they began last year the master facility planning process that we're going to talk a little bit more about this evening. I also do want to let you know that on our website, we have a dashboard. So in support of all of the strategies in the Vision 2018 plan, there is a very specific dashboard that the Board of Education uses to monitor our progress during the year. It has very specific learning targets that are important for us to monitor and ensure that we're meeting goals. It's also got some metrics in each of the other 5 commitment areas, ensuring that in fact, we are delivering on our promise within those areas of commitment. I want to tell you, on our website, if you go to the section of our website under Board of Education, there's a link to Vision 2018. You will see all of the documents, both the chart that's in front of you tonight, but you'll also see this dashboard. And again, as we update each year, key learning targets, key areas of focus within that Vision 2018 plan. This is a dynamic dashboard that continues to get updated. It also has links to a number of the presentations or the updates that we've provided for the Board of Education. So you as a community member certainly are welcome, and I would encourage you to come in and take a look at the dashboard. So, we have a plan. We've got a Vision 2018 plan, right? But as I mentioned at the start, that plan is built upon lots of successes that we've had within the district, not just over the past year, but over the past several decades on which we are building. The third and the final page that I'm going to reference you to is in your packet, is a little sheet that's called Planning for a Future State of Our Schools Accomplishments. Okay. If you take a look at this sheet and just read down through. I'm not going to read all of the accomplishments to you, but I want to highlight just a couple that I think are important. Again, these are several of the celebrations for which we're very, very proud in District 200. And starting right at the top under student learning. In 2015, we graduated 1,059 students. Of those students, the 1,059 students, we had 13 National Merit finalists, and 95% of our graduates went on to a 2 or 4 year institution. Our District 200 ACT composite of 23.7 is about 3 points above the state average. And we also had 1,200 students take an AP class last year, and 43% of our students scored a 3 or higher, making them eligible to receive college coursework. And again, early experience to post-secondary coursework, critically important to students as they transition on. We had 2 buildings nominated for Blue Ribbon Awards last year. We added, skipping all the way down to the bottom, we added 2,300 mobile pieces of technology. Those are in the form of Chromebooks, laptops, pieces of technology that are mobile, have the flexibility to move around the building. And we engaged with several other districts in a program called ELO, Expanded Learning Opportunities. That's an opportunity for students at our high schools to take online or digital coursework, both during the school year and a summer school opportunity. Moving down to support systems, last year we were the recipients as part of an early learning collaborative of a federal grant, an early childhood expansion grant. As a result of that, we opened up 2 new classrooms at Jefferson Early Learning Center this year, open to 40 students. Those are fully funded preschool opportunities. And again, I think the statistics on early learning would suggest that for every dollar you invest in early learning, the return is anywhere between $7 and $17 down the road on the system. And so we were incredibly proud to have the opportunity to open up new preschool opportunities for our community. We have a large English learning population in the district. We have a very successful program servicing those students. Last year, 20%, or 244 of our English learners attained English proficiency. That compares to a state average of 12%. Those are students that have gained proficiency and are moving on then to receive their instruction completely within the core educational environment. We as a school district are part of a case study or a national model on social emotional learning, again making sure that we are attentive not only to the academic learning needs of our students, but making sure that we are also attentive to their social emotional learning needs. If you flip over to the back, under finance, 2 things that I want to highlight under finance last year. Our bond rating with Standards & Poor's was upgraded last year, and that is a result of our financial outlook and the work that the district's been doing. We also this year have moved back up to the highest state recognition, which is a financial recognition ranking within the state of Illinois. That's a function of the requisite amount of fund balance for the state. That's a function of having a balanced budget, spending within that budget. And so again, for a community, that's a good sign in terms of financial stability. Under community engagement, we're here this evening, obviously, to continue our commitment to community engagement. The Board of Education also, earlier in the summer, authorized a new advisory committee within the district called the Citizens Advisory Committee. I will tell you there are just a couple of spots left open and available on that. We've got a cap of 36 on that advisory committee, and that application's only been out for a little while, and we've already had 30 applicants. So if that's something that you might be interested in learning a little bit more about or being a part of, I'd suggest that you talk with us this evening, and we can direct you to the application. Again, our goal is to continue to expand opportunities to not only share information with the community, but engage in an ongoing dialogue about the work that we're doing. And then finally, underneath facilities, we're going to talk a little bit more this evening about facilities and our facility master plan. But the district has, for the last couple of years, maintained a capital development plan. And again, we have invested over the last 5 years almost $13 million in our facilities. We've got work to do. We know we've got work to do, thus the area of focus, but there has been a commitment to making sure that we maintain quality facilities. So we've got a lot to be proud of, but with knowing that we've got a lot to be proud of, what we also know is that the future of education, the future of learning, the future of our learners is changing at a really rapid pace. It's changing right now probably at a rate that's faster than we have experienced before. And just a couple of things that you see up here as we talk about future-ready learning. Again, the pace of change in society has picked up exponentially. The growth of knowledge in society has picked up exponentially, where we as an educational system used to really think of our role as imparting knowledge, imparting content to our students. There is now more content available to our students in this little device that they're carrying around with them every day. Right? And so what that does is changes for us just the role of what education will be. Also, what we're recognizing certainly is that as we move beyond just that focus on content, there are other critical attributes that we're learning that the workplace is saying are essential for our students. One of those certainly being creativity, right? The ability to think critically and creatively about a problem. And so for us, what that means as we think about the future of education is that the future of education to some degree is largely unknown, right? What we used to be able to think about in terms of trends that impacted school districts, we don't know what the next trend is going to be, but our role is going to be to prepare students for that level of uncertainty, right, as they move forward. This is a really busy chart, but I think it's a really fascinating one. So as you think about the students that are in our schools today, right, they largely fall in what's considered what's called Generation Z, right? And there have been several different, kind of groupings of what falls in Generation Z, but generally kind of accepted to be those born between 95 and 2009. That's pretty much all of the students that sit in our schools today. And there's a couple of interesting things about our learners and the way that they're changing that I want to point out. One up here, right? And that's the amount of jobs that they're likely to see in their career. It's expected that Generation Z, our learners, will have 17 different jobs in their lifetime. Doesn't necessarily mean whole new careers, but they're going to experience a lot of change within the workplace. Generation Z are highly digital, right? Their life is online, and again, you can see just the explosion of digital opportunities that are available to them. That comes with challenges. If you look down here on the bottom, right? And so in a lot of the generations that are parents or educators within the school system, there were generally kind of 3 stages of life that you pass through: childhood, teenager, into adulthood. The explosion of technology has sort of created these other stages in life, this tween stage in life, right? Why is that? To some degree, it's because of the amount of information that they have access to in the world that makes, candidly, growing up very challenging, right? Introduces them to things. Thus, when I talk about SEL, absolutely critical as we think about that need. Okay? Up on the right side, okay, the way that Generation Z learners are engaged is very different, right? They're much more visual than verbal. They're not just kind of sit and get learners. They're active learners, right? They want to be a part of the learning process. And so there's a ton of information up there, and I think the other one that I heard this recently I think is fascinating, is that for Generation Z, it's kind of widely suggested now that for them, email communication is going to be their formal means of communication. Right? Email is going to be formal. In the same way that we used to talk about formal letter writing, they now have this whole language that they use in their informal modes of communication. And again, not to suggest, I'm not suggesting to you, I don't want to make anybody nervous and saying we're going to start teaching that language within our schools, but the reality is it's a part of the communication process for which we've got to be aware. And so what does all this mean? What it means for us as we think about the future of education is that the learner, the person with the skills to continue to learn, is going to be a very active part of they're going to be in control, right, as we move forward. The learned, okay, going to get left behind. Those that simply have the knowledge, but don't have the skills, the ability to adapt, they're going to have a harder time when you think about a lot of those changes that are coming to them. That means changes for us as well within the school system. That means a shift from a more teacher-controlled, teacher-centered environment to one that's focused on the needs of the learner, right, and what the learner is doing. Right? It shifts the concept of where learning is going to take place, both learning within our buildings, and so as we get to talking a little bit more about the master facility plan, you're going to see that spaces that previously were just part of kind of crowd control within buildings are now becoming active parts of the learning process as technology has shifted time and place. Technology has also changed this notion of individualized learning. Right? So rather than learning taking place on a regimented, very planned process, technology now allows us to individualize learning in ways that we couldn't before, and shifts really what I think is going to be that course of learning for students moving forward. Right? And we're going to shift again from kind of a general population of consumers to producers. You think a lot about technology. Think about the information that you can now produce and put out there. It's changing that significantly. And so that for us is going to shift learning, and it makes really this question of what is it that we're planning for? Are we planning for our past, or are we planning for our students' future? And I am here to tell you, certainly tonight, I'm assuming you would want to hear that the answer to that is we're planning for our children's future, and we are. So what does that look like for us in District 200? We're going to introduce a new concept to you tonight called FIT, the Future of Instruction and Technology. And one of the things that I want to point out kind of right in the middle of this FIT environment is there's this concept called standards mastery. So I'm not suggesting standing up in front of you tonight that there's no longer a role for a core curriculum in education, or that there's not a role for content. There very much is. Right? There are still essential skills and essential knowledge that students will have to master within disciplines. But that is not enough. Right? That's been a big focus in education even nationally since really the inception of No Child Left Behind, that really focused on the essential skills within some core disciplines. But that's not enough anymore. What we know about future-ready students is that they have to be able to construct knowledge. They have to be creative, and they have to know how to collaborate. They have to be able to learn in different time and locations. And so for us, this concept of FIT is very much going to be central to the work that we're going to do and a lot of the goals that you're going to hear us talk about here as we move forward. So what are the 4 priorities that our Board of Education has set for this year? They have set 4 priorities, or goals, from within the chart. And the first is this concept of future of instruction and technology, a focus in that. That's got 5 key components that I just want to mention quickly. One of those being this notion of universal access to technology. So some of you may have come tonight kind of wondering, so what is the district's plan around technology? It's this concept. We want to make sure that our students and our teachers have access to the technology they need to learn in the most effective way. What that's going to look like, I will tell you, we're not planning for a one-to-one initiative right now within the district, partially because I think there are a lot of good learning experiences that don't still involve a screen. And so if you invest fully in a one-to-one experience, and there are large amounts of time when that device is not being utilized like any other learning tool, I think there can be a little bit of an over-investment in it. But we want to make sure that our students and our teachers have access to the technology they need to carry out instruction in the way that we want for them to. We know that at the core of FIT, I went the wrong way. At the core of FIT is still this notion of curriculum. And so we are going to continue to revise curriculum, not only on a large scale, like whole subject area curriculum revisions, but FIT really empowers teachers through their learning communities to adjust curriculum and instruction on a regular basis. We want to make sure that FIT takes into account the types of professional learning experiences that our teachers have, and so we're focused on that. But again, at the core is this notion that FIT should provide new learning opportunities. for students, right? Really, the learning environment is about the experience for students. And so we are working hard as we kind of unfold those components of fit and roll them out as we think about learning in our schools to shift learning experiences to align with fit. Second area of focus for the board this year that is a curriculum focus is on science. We are in the middle of a revamp of our science curriculum, aligning it to the next generation science standards that were recently released. There's a much heavier focus in the next generation science standards on engineering and process in science. So again, less just about content, more about process of learning and really beginning to think scientifically. Much like the Common Core Math Standards really focused a lot on process in math and how do you approach problems, very similar in terms of approach within science. Third area of focus of the board this year is really on enhancing partnerships. And so kind of like our goal last year, certainly this has a financial element to it, in that a lot of the groups that we are continuing to support and partner with in support of our schools are providing resources, but more importantly, it's partnerships from opportunities like this and partnerships with those organizations that bring support to our programs, bring human resource to our programs, bring intellectual resources into our programs. And so what I'm going to tell you is we've listed a couple of the entities and groups that we're continuing to reach out to try to partner in support of our schools. But this challenge of the next generation of learning is a daunting one. And so if you've got a thought on how it is that perhaps you're working with an organization that might be able to support our schools either financially or through some other level of contribution, we are very open to the conversation, and I would welcome the conversation. And then finally, the last board priority that we're going to dig into a little bit further tonight is facilities and the development of a master facility plan. Again, I mentioned this at the beginning. This slide you saw at the beginning just in terms of the amount of facilities. Here's an interesting visual. So maybe this is a test for everybody in school to see if you can name all of the presidents. But Lowell, I believe built in 1918. Right, that's our oldest school. Whittier, I think 1925. You see a lot of schools built in the 1950s and 60s. And then a couple of schools that have come more recently. Right? But here's the good news, that the community in the past, the Board of Education in the past, has remained committed to updating our facilities. So that's not the last time that these facilities have been largely touched or renovated. And so as we move that over, you do see that there's an outlier on that list. We have one facility in our Early Learning Center that has not been touched really since it was built in the 1950s. Okay? That's got to change. We've got to address the needs that we have at Jefferson as a part of the master facility plan. But also, as you go over to the side, the good news is we've done work at our buildings, but really dig into those presidential windows, right? Remember, all of those are either 4 or 8 year windows of time. And so we do have a number of facilities that it has now been 20 years since they had some type of substantial work. And so what that means for our schools is just a reality, right? We've got some physical needs that are growing within our facilities. And so what we're introducing this year is this concept of a master facility plan. And I want you to think about it like a puzzle, where one piece of the puzzle is the physical assessment. And the physical assessment within buildings just includes things like paving and windows and roofs and exteriors and doors. Right? We know in our facilities that there are some needs that have to get addressed in the physical piece. And oh, by the way, many of these things, as you begin to talk about windows and daylighting, as you begin to talk about mechanical systems, they impact learning, right? Because they can have a significant impact on the type of learning experience that goes on within that. And so what we know and we've worked on within the Board of Education is this physical assessment. We have a capital facilities plan. And the capital facilities plan lets us know over the next 8 years the work that we anticipate needing to get done within our buildings. And there's a lot. Very candidly, there's a lot of work that needs to get done. But as we worked with the community during the Engage 200, the feedback we heard from the community is we understand that challenge. But as you're going to take on that challenge, don't stop just with the physical assessment. Let's look at if there are also some opportunities that facilities need to change to better align with the types of learning experiences that need to take place. And so that takes us into the master facility planning. I'm going to show you a very, very short video, and then I'm going to introduce a guest that's going to tell you a little bit more about the master facility.
School buildings are a reflection of a community. They're a reflection of the care, the investment communities made over a period of time, how important a good, effective learning environment for our students, our children. The schools reflect the community's values. And so we as a board believe, and as a community believe, that quality schools, quality learning environments, quality and strategic investment will protect all taxpayers. We want to make our communities a strong place and a desirable place to live, to work, to visit. We believe having good quality schools aligned with 21st century learning are valuable to all members of our community, not just those that are in school.
Facility master plan is a long-term view of how it is that our facilities need to support learning within the districts. It's a combination of both a physical conditions assessment, so upkeep needs, the general repair and maintenance type needs, paired with an educational assessment of how it is that facilities can be transformed to optimally support learning in the district. We've got a lot of buildings that were built in the 1950s, and I think as we look now at the needs of learning, at the way that learning takes place, we've got to make sure that the physical spaces match that. So when you look at the technology infrastructure that needs to be in place to support the kinds of learning experiences that students are engaged in, that has an impact on the facility itself. When you look at electric and where electric is available inside of classrooms, when you simply look at the physical arrangement of classroom and where learning is taking place. Areas like hallways and common areas that really were just used for traffic control in the past are now integral parts of the learning experience for kids. We're going to be hosting a series of community engagement sessions this year where the community can build a greater understanding of what the master facility plan is, but then also give us feedback as we're developing and vetting some of the options that are going to be a part of the master facility plan. So we want them to be aware, we want them to get involved, and we want them to provide feedback.
So it's my pleasure right now to introduce Mr. Steve Turks. We have partnered this year, the Board of Education has partnered this year with a new architectural firm called Perkins & Will, and they're going to guide us through this master facility planning, and so it's my pleasure to welcome Mr. Steve Turks.
Well, welcome everybody. As Jeff mentioned, my name is Steve Turks. I'm a principal with Perkins & Will, based here in Chicago. And it's our pleasure really to be working with District 200 on this exciting project. There are a number of objectives for my segment of the presentation tonight. We want to talk a little bit about the importance of the master plan itself. I'll describe the process to you and lay out the timeline and the schedule for that. And then I will also talk about a process that we've already engaged the district with, which is in creating some guiding principles And I'll describe those and talk about the fact that, and actually Dr. Schuler will talk about the fact that we need your input on those guiding principles. So a little bit about Perkins & Will. It's a firm that was founded by Larry Perkins and Phil Will back in 1935 in Chicago. Really our first and one of our most important projects was a small elementary school in the suburbs of Chicago. And since then, we've worked literally on thousands of school projects and hundreds of thousands of students walk through buildings that were designed by Perkins & Will. We've worked with many of your peer districts around the Chicago area, either on master plans like this or on school building projects. Not just here in Chicago, but we've actually worked sort of across the country and in several foreign countries as well. But enough about us. Let's talk about your process and the work that we're engaging in here. The diagram that's up on the screen now is really geared toward, and I hope drives home the point that this process is really about your community. It's not about what Perkins & Will thinks should happen in your schools. It's about what you all think should be happening in your schools. We're here to lend our guidance and our expertise, certainly, but this really is a process that will be guided and influenced by the community. So we see the community on the outer circle of this diagram, and so there's any number of touch points with the community that will happen along the way, whether we're talking about elected officials, a few of which are present tonight, business community members, partnerships that Dr. Schuler has already talked about, working with service groups and so forth. Interior to that, Dr. Schuler has already mentioned the work around fit that's happened in the district, and that will certainly have an impact on the master plan as we look at the facilities. The community engagement process will have touch points with students along the way. Getting student voice in this process is really critical because they look at facilities differently than we do. They're the ones that use them, and that they're built for in many respects. And other touch points, but this really feeds into the inner circle there, which you see the Board of Education. Ultimately, the Board of Education will make a decision to adopt a facilities master plan. There'll be many iterations and options that will be presented, ultimately distilled into a final master plan. But that master plan is at the center of the work that we're doing. What is a master plan and why do it? A master plan really takes a large, broad view of the district. A lot of work has already happened around that physical adequacy assessment. How are the roofs performing? How are the windows performing? In many respects, irrespective of the fact that it's a school, right? It's a building that needs to be maintained. We are also engaging in, and I will describe, an educational adequacy assessment that does look specifically at how those buildings work and function as school buildings. It really takes a broad brush look at how are all of your physical assets in the district performing for you. And takes a long-term view, right? It's not what should be done by next year. It's what's done over many years, and how can those facilities best support the type of work that needs to happen in them on a daily basis. So why do that? As an architect who designs schools, I firmly believe that the physical environment has a large impact on the education process. So it's an opportunity. You have the opportunity for those buildings to work for you in a very, very engaged and strong way. We certainly always want to be thinking about and planning for the future, and we want to be avoiding any potential conflicts. So as we're looking at changing a space or even updating a space for its physical need, a new mechanical system or new plumbing, if the plumbing is failing, let's not put plumbing in a wall that might need to move because of what needs to happen educationally in the building. So we want to look at those two puzzle pieces together at the same time. And certainly doing so allows the district and the district's taxpayers to spend your money wisely. So that the first dollar you spend on the facilities is a wise dollar spent on facilities. So we're back to the puzzle pieces. I've already sort of foreshadowed this a little bit, I think. But the educational adequacy assessment is something that we're underway with. We've been out in all the buildings this past week and yet again this week, looking at how the buildings are working with students in them on a daily basis. What are we seeing? And there's a certain lens that we're looking at through at those facilities through that I'll describe in just a moment. But some of the things we're looking at, what's the size of space? How do spaces relate to each other? What type of technology is in classrooms? What type of furniture is in classrooms? The furniture is actually really being elevated in school today as people understanding the critical importance that ergonomics and furniture and how that supports, or in some cases detracts from the educational process. There's any number of different things that we're looking at as we're walking through the buildings. The process, the schedule, and the schedule for that is the graphic that you see on the screen now. Tonight is the first of 4 community engagement sessions. The other 3, I'm sorry, are on the screen up here. So here we are tonight. One of the things that we'll be focusing on tonight, and in a few moments I'll be describing the guiding principles that were developed earlier this summer. But sharing those and having you do some work, which Dr. Schuler will explain here, about affirming those or providing some guidance on those guiding principles. But the other 3 community engagement sessions that will follow this, one in December, one in January, and the last in February, will really be next steps in our sharing the work that we're doing on the master plan. The next community engagement session will mainly be about sharing the results of our assessments. So it'll be a very informational type of meeting. Here's what we've seen. Here's the results of our assessment. The 2 that follow that will really be geared toward sharing options that are being developed in terms of what are some possible solutions for facilities. So we'll do that at 2 consecutive community engagement sessions, the 3rd and the 4th. We will be incorporating input and feedback that we get at any number of different touch points in that circle diagram that I showed to you earlier, and presenting that back to you to gain, again, further input from you. So your presence here tonight is very much appreciated. It's critical to the success of the project. I always think that schools are really a reflection of the communities that they sit in. They really hold up the aspirations and the values of those communities, and so we really do need that input. So that's the process. At the end, and that sort of the end of this process will be somewhere possibly around the end of this school year, or possibly at the beginning of the next school year, that the board will adopt, make a resolution and adopt the master plan. I had mentioned those guiding principles. I'll describe those in a moment. I've already used sort of the metaphor of the lens of those guiding principles. But here we see it graphically on the screen. There's a lot of input that's been taken already to form these guiding principles. That there really is this lens that we're looking at as we're thinking about the educational adequacy of the facilities as we walk through those and talk to the administrators and their teams about how those buildings are functioning as schools. So it's a really critical piece, and it's a piece that we want your input on tonight. So without further ado, here they are on the screen. There's 5 guiding principles that have been developed. These were developed earlier this summer in August with district level administrators across the entire district. And so we had almost a whole day session where we talked about many of the subjects that Dr. Schuler's already talked about. What's the future of learning look like, and how might that, we talked about the FIT guide, and did a lot of work with those folks, and they generated this list. So we distilled a lot of comments down into common threads and themes, and this is what you see on the screen before you. This is also, by the way, a handout in your packets tonight. So I'll describe each of these in a little bit more detail now. So the first one, and it's prefaced always by all recommendations should reflect the continuing evolution of education globally and within the district. And so the diagram you see on the screen is one that you've already seen tonight, and the concept that Dr. Schuler introduced is around fit, right? So there's any number of components to fit, several of which are being focused on very strongly this year, this academic year, but all of these have an impact on the facility. There's a correlation that can be drawn between any one of these and how this facility can support that. So if we think about sort of the future of learning, here's a quiz for you tonight. So this is a circa 1920 photograph. Can anybody in the room name where that picture was taken? Anybody?
Reed Community High School.
Right. said that? Yeah, so it's Wheaton Community High School, circa 1920, and some things you'll notice right away about that is certainly the clothes people are wearing. The thing I noticed as an architect, I start looking at the space, and I look at how every student is sitting in a row, much like the seat you're in right now. Those desks are bolted to the floor, so completely inflexible environment. But in 1920, the teacher really did sort of have all the knowledge, right? As Dr. Schuler demonstrated when he pulled was it an iPhone he had? It was an iPhone. There's lots of other sources of information today. So certainly those learning environments are changing, right? The role of the teacher in those environments is teaching from what a lot of people refer to as the sage on the stage to sort of the guide by the side, right? Guiding that classroom, guiding that instruction. And so the tools that are used in that classroom also look different. So diagrammatically, you can sort of see that 20th century classroom on the left here, all kids facing the teacher in the front, to something that's much different than you see on the left, right? So where the student is at the center of the learning, and at the center of, it's a very student-centered environment. And so there's any number of other factors that come into play here. You think about, learning happens in any number of different sizes of groups, for instance. The standard group that we think about is those 25 to 30 students in a classroom, but certainly we know we also learn in small groups of 4 to 6 kids at a time. Or as an individual, sometimes students just need time by themselves to study on their own. And so providing that kind of flexibility in the space is really, really important. Dr. Schuler also talked about that move from that sort of pendulum swing from where content was king to students also being creators just being consumers to being creators of information and knowledge. And so providing those kind of spaces where students can do that is really important. The integration of technology and how technology plays a huge role today in the learning process. Not that it's the end-all, be-all, but it's certainly an important component in how it gets integrated. Studies and research would show us that if a student has to stand up and deliver and educate their peers, that their retention of that knowledge goes way, way up. So where can we provide those kind of opportunities for students in schools today, where they can become the teacher? There's lots of talk about STEM today, science, technology, engineering, and math. Other people are talking about STEAM, adding that A in for the arts. But where do we provide those kind of spaces where it's not just memorizing something and giving that back on a test, but also learning by doing something, making something, creating something. And so that's one of the reasons I think those programs are so popular. And the students would also tell you it also feels very relevant to them. They feel much more engaged in their education in those kind of programs. So there's lots of things, really interesting things happening in education today and how facilities can support that. Things that we want to be thinking about and looking at. The second recommendation, second guiding principle, all recommendations should create environments that are flexible and encourage collaboration and creativity. Collaboration and creativity, again, is one of those circles on the FIT guide. And so it's a huge focus for this year. And so if we just think about, for instance, a facility can be flexible on any number of different levels, but if you look at the scale of a classroom, and I've already mentioned furniture in a classroom, from that lecture mode, right, that traditional lecture mode, to students working in groups, to students working in sort of a UN style or a seminar style. But what's important about these photographs is that kind of change can happen sort of at the click of a finger, right? Okay, students, let's regroup. And they can do it on their own because the furniture is flexible, it's movable, it's not real heavy. The third guiding principle, all recommendations should provide a physical environment that is optimized for learning and instruction. So here we're talking about sort of all the physical characteristics of the environment. Things like what you see on the slide here, ergonomics I've already talked about relative to furniture. Lighting, the artificial lighting we see in schools, but also natural daylighting. Research would point to the improvements in student test scores in naturally lit environments. Indoor air quality is huge. Acoustics is another big one in schools today. The average, statistically, the average classroom in this country, students can hear about 75% of what's heard. So for young kids, that's a real problem, right? They miss a word, they miss the meaning. And the district's already done a lot of good work around this with acoustics in the school. So here's a good example of those two puzzle pieces coming together. So in a lot of your classrooms, you have what are called unit ventilators. Those are those mechanical units you see affixed to the outside wall. The district is now, when there's being replaced, doing a vertical unit that goes up the wall. That horizontal unit blows air out, right out the top of it, just by the windows. You probably have all seen these. The vertical units take it and duct it up above the ceiling, and it blows it out through registers in the ceiling. It's a much more quiet system. Excuse me. So the acoustical, there's an acoustical benefit to fixing that mechanical system. So it's a twofer, right? You got two things happening at the same time: improving the mechanical system and improving acoustics. This fourth guiding principle: all recommendations should allow for parity across the district. We realize there's 13 elementary schools and 4 middle schools and 2 high schools, and so as we look at those across those age spans, we want to make sure that there's opportunities, similar opportunities in each of these buildings relative to facilities. So whether we're looking at science, and we are looking at science for the next generation science standards, or we're looking at your media centers across the district, your library learning centers, and how those relate. And there's huge opportunities in these existing spaces to make some interesting improvements, or how technology is incorporated. So it's all important components to looking at your physical facilities. Lastly, all recommendations should be fiscally responsible, efficient, and sustainable. And we think about, funding these over the long term. I've already mentioned that the first dollar that's spent gives you the biggest bang for the buck. And so, as a taxpayer in my own community, this is certainly of interest to me in terms of how my school district funds their facility improvements. We also need to think about spaces like this that have been renovated, where windows have been replaced, new LED lighting has gone in, a new mechanical system has gone in, and so they now have air conditioning in this space that they never had before, but their energy use actually went down, right? So, and that has a lot to do with any number of those systems and how they're all working together. And so improved educationally, but also improved in terms of the bottom line. So really this brings together those facility puzzle pieces, right? That physical adequacy assessment and the educational adequacy assessment to come together to really, and looking at through that lens of the guiding principles to inform solutions or potential range of solutions that we can look at and vet with you as a community in terms of what's the right answer for District 200. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Dr. Chu.
So I've got just 3 things to do here to bring us home tonight. I'll do them very quickly. Our goal was to try to keep you here about an hour, and I think we're just a little bit over an hour. So just 3 things that I want to mention. One is that both in your folder, so in the sheet that Steve referenced in your folder, there's a little paper survey on that. I also want to let you know that out in the Commons area, when we leave tonight, there are a bunch of Chromebooks, computers set up where you can actually take this electronically. We would love to get your feedback on these principles. And here's what we really are curious to hear from you as members of the community. For each of the guiding principles, as you reflect on that principle itself, we're asking you to just give it a little rating, 1 to 5. 5, it's really, really, really important to me. 1, maybe not as important to me as others. Not a ranking, so you don't have to use the numbers 1 through 5, right, on each of these. But for each guiding principle individually, what level of importance do you get? And I want to underscore this really, really important feedback for us. And the reason why it's important is that as we consider options and iterations within the master facility plan, it's really important for us to know and understand what the priorities of the community are as we consider this. Doesn't mean that the 5 lenses is not still going to be considered, the 5 principles not going to be considered, but it's really important for us to understand how the community values those things as we consider options. So I'd ask you, 1, to take the survey. Second thing that I would ask for you to do for us as a follow-up to this evening is come back and join us for the other evenings. On December the 2nd, come back and bring a couple of friends, bring a couple of neighbors, right? The more participation that we get in this process, the better that this master facility plan is truly going to reflect the interests, the goals of the community. So the next session is on December the 2nd, followed by January 20th and February 17th. There's a little card in the pocket of your folder that reminds you of those 3 dates. The third thing that I want to do just in closing is I'm going to just address very, very quickly what I'm certain is an elephant within the room. And that's that I am sure, you don't have to raise your hand and tell me you're thinking this, but I know that there are probably people out there that are wondering about money. How it is that you're going to go about addressing the fiscal challenge of a master facility. I will tell you these community engagement sessions are not going to deal with money. They're going to deal with the logistics of the master facility plan. But 2 comments that I want to make on this on the front end. Right? The goal in building a master facility plan is not necessarily to build a plan that gets implemented tomorrow, or even all of it that gets implemented next year. As we address or identify a number of the options, earlier in the presentation I talked a lot about partnerships. We have collectively in the district organizations that raise, through PTAs, through the foundation, that raise about $500,000 a year that supports work within the districts. Many of our PTAs, through partnership with their principal, have already actually started to address some of these components even within the master facility plan, to think about technology that would support schools or different designs of furniture within a learning center or pieces like that. And so I give you that example just to say the goal is not necessarily to develop a plan that we try to implement all in one time. They're going to come out of this process some needs we have to address immediately. I can take you back to the president's slide to think about our early learning center. There are some needs that are going to have to get addressed right away. Along with this process of building a master facility plan, the Board of Education does have a finance committee, and that finance committee is going to begin the process of looking at options over time to fund the plan. So again, I understand why money might be a concern as you're thinking about this, but as you come to these sessions, know that you're coming to participate in helping us build the plan, and then we will work with the Board of Education on implementation of that plan. What are we going to address right away, and how are we going to do that with the support of the community? So, with that said, we are right at the end of our evening, so the last thing that I want to mention out in the comments, a couple of things. One, there are computers available if you'd like to take the survey. If you'd rather take a paper copy, there's some tables available with pens that you can do that. There are some refreshments out in the commons kindly provided by our PTA Council and some of our individual PTAs, so feel free to stay and have something to eat. Members of the Board of Education and Administration, all of which are wearing name tags, will also be out in the commons along with the Perkins and Will team. If you've got questions, comments, feedback, we'll be out there. We'd love to hear from you. So thanks so much for coming tonight at our first session, and we'll see you on December 2nd.